Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to show you how to get started marketing an estate planning practice using the internet. Today's webinar is being recorded and it will be available to replay online later this week. We'll also make the slides available at that time, so there's no need to take notes. We do have a lot of ground to cover today, including 3 specialists who are going to talk about different aspects of getting started online the right way. We've done several of these webinars for different practice areas in this Start, Grow, Dominate series this month, starting with the Start series. And although this webinar is scheduled to run about 2 hours, we've noticed that the last few webinars have run a little bit over that, averaging about 2 hours and 15 minutes. We will try to make as much progress as we can, as quickly as we can, but we do have a lot of ground to cover. For that reason, we're not going to be able to stop to answer questions during the presentation. But if you do have technical difficulties with your GoToWebinar audio or video, please do let us know via the chat area of the GoToWebinar control panel or via the questions area. We will also have a questions and answer session at the end of this presentation if you're still around and have some questions. And so if you do have questions that occur to you along the way, please feel free to add them to the questions area or send us a public or private chat message, and we'll make sure to address those when we get done with the presentation. My name is Dan JAFFE. Before becoming the full-time CEO of LawLytics, I built 2 successful law firms in different states. The first was a highly successful practice in the Seattle area, and then in Arizona later on. During my years, the last few years of practicing in Arizona, I also built a highly successful online legal directory. And that legal directory was what made me transition from the practice of law into technology full-time. That directory was acquired a couple years after starting it. And I want to say that during my years of practicing law, I made a lot of marketing investments, and I got badly burned several times. During that exercise of trying to figure out what worked and what didn't work for my practice, I realized that nobody cared about my practice as much as I did, and that in order to succeed, I needed to really understand how the internet worked, and I needed to be able to be in control of my marketing. I did the heavy lifting back then of figuring out how the internet worked and how to best use it to grow my practice. And today I love showing fellow attorneys how this stuff really works. We have a great program for you today. Each of our presenters is a specialist in her area. I'm going to introduce each of them to you now so that once we get rolling, we can jump from one presentation to the next without delay. Victoria Blute comes from a journalism background and is the community manager here at LawLytics. If you're a frequent reader of our blog, or if you've attended previous webinars that we've done over the last couple years, you're undoubtedly familiar with her work. Victoria is going to talk with you about how your potential clients use the internet and how you can use the internet to attract them, capture their business, and help them understand the basics of how your estate planning practice works by you understanding how the internet works. Rachel Shalat holds a JD and a master's degree and practiced law for several years before joining LawLytics. She is the Vice President of Content Operations here at LawLytics, which means that she is in charge of all of the content that our team writes for our member attorneys, which amounts to millions of words of written content on their websites and blogs each year. Rachel is going to discuss content strategies specific to starting an estate planning web presence. Sophia Oliboni holds a master's degree in web design and is a design specialist here at LawLytics. When new members sign up for our service, she and her team help them choose their design preferences based on their goals. Today, Sophia is going to walk you through some of the things that all attorneys should know about website design when it comes to building an effective estate planning web presence. The marketing of estate planning has changed a lot in recent years, and it continues to quickly evolve. We've all noticed the onslaught of alternative methods using the internet to just going into an attorney's office and having whatever estate planning instrument is appropriate drafted. For attorneys who are willing to evolve with those changes, this presents an opportunity to either start making a lot of money or continue to make a lot of money. It also presents a way to get ahead of established and market-leading law firms that aren't adapting and to compete effectively with non-legal players who have entered the space. The internet has become the great equalizer. No longer is marketing success for estate planning lawyers simply a matter of budget and the willingness to spend money and take financial risks. Now, any attorney can break into estate planning with really what amounts to a minimum financial investment. And the previously established attorneys are no longer safe in their practices and their business flow, no matter how big their budgets are or how much of an established reputation they've accrued. This webinar will show you how to lay the foundation to compete now and for the foreseeable future. The things that we are going to discuss do require that you expend some time and some effort, and they require you to really either budget that you're going to get involved, or that you're going to, so budgeting your time, or that you're going to pay somebody else to do what we're going to be talking about as a proxy on your behalf. Done right, the outcome of either path is the same. Whichever path you choose, whether you, when you make the commitment to building the foundation of your estate planning practice marketing the right way, and you understand the strategy behind it, the time or money that you spend on it will not be wasted. What's great about the evolution of marketing for estate planning online is that any attorney anywhere can get started easily and cost effectively. And that's really what this webinar is all about. And when you know how to avoid the traps and tricks that too many lawyers fall into while they're asleep at the switch or while they're hoping that things will go back to the way they used to be, and when you learn how to do a few simple things well, there's really a ton of money still to be made. Today's webinar is the first in a series of 3 that will take you from really just getting started with an estate planning practice to dominating your market. Today we're going to cover the very basics. We hope that today's webinar will provide you with a solid understanding and the motivation to get started in the right direction, or if you find yourself in this situation, to get restarted on the right way to success. The next webinar in this series, which will happen in February, will focus on growing an estate planning practice. In that webinar next month, we're going to assume that you already understand the fundamentals and that you have either applied them to your website and blog, or you're having somebody else apply them to your website and blog. At least you've gotten started on that. That webinar will show you how the real money is made for most firms. And we'll take a much deeper dive into the forces that drive sustainable online success, including content and reputation management. And we'll give you a more detailed content roadmap to develop your estate planning marketing. The final webinar in this series, which happens in March, will focus on crossing the chasm between growing a thriving practice and a truly dominant one. And with estate planning, there really is a lot of room for reaching further than your narrow geographic area, and there's a lot of room for innovation and even automation for those attorneys who are really paying attention. We have customers who are truly dominating their markets online, and I can tell you that each of them started with the fundamentals that we're going to go over today. The final webinar in this series is going to show you that extra 2 to 3% difference that you can make once you already have your marketing engines thriving and have grown to scale. And those 2 to 3% difference makers are things that really make a difference when you're getting a ton of clients that inquire of your firm or that engage you online every day, but that really are not worth doing at the beginning and intermediate stages. And so we're going to go through all of those phases. Today's webinar is for lawyers and staff members of law firms that are either currently handling estate planning or that plan to in the future. You don't need to be a LawLytics member to benefit from this webinar. And before starting the webinar, I noticed that some of the people that had come in are current LawLytics members, and many of you are not yet LawLytics members. But everything that we are going to talk about in this webinar, even though you don't need to be a LawLytics member to benefit, will be easier for you to implement if you are a LawLytics member, because the LawLytics system and service is built and optimized for what we're going to be talking about today. If you're just getting started with your website, this webinar is a great place to start. And if your website isn't working for you, it's likely because one or more of the fundamentals that we'll cover today have been ignored or poorly implemented, and or in the situation of estate planning attorneys, you're ignoring some of the other market forces that are amassing around you that we'll get into in future webinars. If you're here, it's probably because you want your website to work to bring in more estate planning business, people that can pay your fees and that have the kind of matters that you really want to be focusing on. But being here isn't enough. There are no participation trophies in the practice of law. Either you get the client's business or you don't. Either another lawyer is going to get it, or a legal Zoom or something else like that is going to get the client. And if you want to succeed, you'll need to commit to investing either your time or your money in that success, and sometimes it requires both. There are no shortcuts, and there are no magic tricks that will make you successful, but there is a roadmap that we're going to start to give you today. The goal of this session is simple. We want you to understand how to build your firm's online marketing for estate planning matters using sound and sustainable strategies, and to be able to use that foundation to effectively take your marketing really as far as you want it to go. We hope that what you learned today will help you capture more opportunities so that your success will then in turn open doors to even greater levels of marketing achievement and stability. By the time this webinar is over, we hope that you'll have a good foundation to do the following. First, start smart. This is because you really only need to do a few things well from the start as long as you avoid the traps. 2, don't overcomplicate things. Building a thriving estate planning web presence is easier than most attorneys think. And finally, number 3, your participation does matter. This is because nobody cares about your practice as much as you do. You need to be involved and you need to be in control. But this doesn't mean that you have to do everything or even anything by yourself. But you do need to know what needs to be done so that in turn you can recognize value, you understand why these things need to be done, and you can avoid wasting time and money on the things that a lot of marketing companies sell to attorneys that really end up being a waste of time and money, and we're here to help you avoid that. The good news is that participation is easy and it can actually be fun, and in this webinar we intend to show you how. So for those of you who are not yet LawLytics members, I want to take about 2 slides in about 5 minutes or so to explain what it is that we do and who we are. You have many choices of companies and of technologies to design, build, host, and help you market your law firm's website. At LawLytics, we do all that, and we also have a lot of competition. So what is LawLytics and how are we different from the others? Well, our company is obsessed with the pursuit of the most efficient method of marketing for each law firm. As we see it, there are two major variables of efficiency. The first is time, and the second is money. LawLytics was created to empower law firms to have unlimited marketing success without wasting either their time or their money. And we have two different types of competitors. On the one hand are full-service marketing companies such as FindLaw and Martin Del Nolo. The way we see it, LawLytics is built to give attorneys all of the upside of using a full-service company without exposing you to the potential downsides and the potential risks. On the other side of the spectrum are do-it-yourself website software programs such as WordPress and Wix, and many others. And these programs tend to be either very cheap or free to use. These programs also happen to come with steep opportunity costs, and lawyers often struggle to make them work, and in the process of struggling, waste a lot of time and miss a lot of opportunities. While both full-service companies and do-it-yourself website platforms are viable options for attorneys, LawLytics offers what we see as a more practical solution for law firms. Our company works exclusively with law firms, and our services are adaptable to every stage of a law firm's growth. Our members can start as small as they choose and then grow as big as they decide without taking dangerous risks or prematurely committing to things that they don't need or that might not work. And our software was built exclusively for lawyers, so the learning curve is easy, enabling our members to add to and edit their websites and turn their efforts into new business without struggling. LawLytics is a membership-based law firm website marketing service. Our service and our software are specifically built for and optimized for law firms. For those of you who have not yet been through the process and are not yet members, here's how it works. The first step is for you to have a conversation with us to make sure that there's an alignment of interests and needs and goals of your firms and our service. Once you've decided that LawLytics is the right fit for you and your firm, the next step is to start your membership, which takes about 5 minutes online, and we'll guide you through that process. Then we'll start the process of setting up and styling your law firm's website. This is a collaborative process, and you'll work with one of our full-time design professionals one-on-one to achieve the optimal look and feel for your site to meet your firm's individual goals. The next step is adding content to your website. The goal of this phase is to have enough content to be able to successfully launch your law firm's website. If you already have a website that you want to import into the LawLytics system, we have the process of transitioning from every other platform into LawLytics down to a science. And if you're starting a brand new website with LawLytics, we'll guide you through the content you need to get started and launch your site. Rachel will talk later on in this webinar about what content is needed to launch an estate planning website and how to build a strong foundation now to prepare for unlimited future growth. You can choose when you're with LawLytics to create your own content, or you can choose to have our team of professional writers do it for you. When your site is ready, we're going to launch it for you. If you're switching from another provider, we'll make sure that there's no downtime and no loss of traffic in the process. Whether you're switching to LawLytics or whether you're starting fresh with a new website, we're going to take care of all of the technical details for you. Once your website is launched, we'll show you how to use the LawLytics system to add to and edit your website, regardless of your previous tech experience. We can take you from zero to highly competent very rapidly because our system was built for busy lawyers who don't have the time to mess around with complicated technology. You'll be able to instantly add and edit things like office locations, attorney bios, case results, recommendations, substantive pages, and blog posts. You'll be able to rearrange your site's menu by simply dragging and dropping pages. You'll be able to create simple and detailed web forms to capture information from potential clients and be able to send them to other systems like Clio with the click of a button. You'll be able to easily insert pictures, videos, documents, and maps into pages of your website. In short, you'll have the power to be as involved in your own website and web presence as you choose to be. And beyond the mechanics, we'll teach you how to implement a strategy that best suits the market, your practice area or areas, and the ambitions of your law firm. We'll show you what works and how to create it without wasting your time or your money. And even though you'll be able to do it yourself, if you ever choose not to, you can delegate the efforts to us. At LawLytics, we use the phrase marketing assets regularly. Give me just a second here. I'm sorry, Tori, go back one. I got ahead of myself. You likely already understand the importance of having a website for your estate planning practice. But I want to take a moment to look at the most important reason why it's essential to not just have a website, but to invest in the kind of website that we'll be showing you how to build during this 3-month series. Keeping these reasons in mind will be just as important in the growth and domination phases over the next couple months as they are in this month's start phase. Your potential estate planning clients are online, and they're using the internet to do research and to make decisions and to even hire an attorney. Even when estate planning clients are referred directly to you by a good referral source, they will still interact with your web presence before making the decision to hire you. If you don't have a website, or if you're at the mercy of everything else about you that exists already online, and you have little or no control over those things, well, you're really not in control of your practice. With a website, you have complete control over your messaging and the opportunity to win the hearts and minds of your potential clients. Your website is there to educate your potential clients about their cases, in this case, what they want to accomplish with their estate planning, whether they are looking for a first-time instrument to be drafted, whether they're making some end-of-life decisions, whether they've just had a change in financial status and are looking to protect themselves from tax implications. Whatever the case is, they're looking for that information online before they reach out to you. Your website is there to make a personal connection between you and your potential clients and to cause your potential clients to like you and to want to hire you. The most important functions of your law firm's website are to, 1, show that you care, 2, show that you know what you're talking about, and 3, show that you're successful. In other words, that you've done what they need from you successfully for other people like them before. These things set the tone for the attorney-client relationship because they establish trust, authority, and confidence. And when you have your potential clients' trust and confidence, and when they see you as an authority before the attorney-client relationship even begins, your chances of them engaging you and hiring you drastically increase. And the benefits do go well beyond marketing and sales. Establishing trust, authority, and confidence helps them frame the attorney-client relationship and sets expectations. This ultimately makes the experience of going through the process with you and your firm easier from both sides and more rewarding as well. As we present this, it's January of 2017. If you're just getting started with your law firm's website, you're already, unfortunately, very late to the game. But that's okay, because for better or for worse, most attorneys who have been in the game for many years have not been playing it well because they've been listening to the wrong people, doing the wrong things, and in the case of estate planning, a lot of them have been kind of asleep at the switch as this whole internet ecosystem has evolved around them. But the bottom line is that website marketing for estate planning practices still works. And it can work better than any other source of business when it's done well. So while everyone is doing it, the fact that most attorneys don't have websites that are performing to their full potential is an opportunity for you and your practice. Having a website is a matter of basic business survival. But having a website that you consciously cultivate using the LawLytics system and the information that you'll get in this webinar series and from other webinars that we've done in the past and will do in the future as well, you can elevate your practice by multiples. We've seen attorneys who were struggling to stay in business start using the LawLytics system and become secure and stable in their practices. And we've seen attorneys who thought they were doing well, who had a steady flow of business, start using the LawLytics system and double their business while actually decreasing their marketing expenses. Like I said, there's no magic trick here. There's a proven method and there's a window of opportunity. Creating a worthwhile website for your law firm is like investing with compounding interest. The earlier you start, the better off you'll be in the long run. And like sound investing advice, there's no need for anything fancy here. You don't need tricks, you don't need cheats, you don't need hacks, you don't need SEO magic. All you need is an understanding of the fundamentals and the technology and time to leverage those fundamentals over time. Now let's talk about marketing assets. At LawLytics, we use the phrase marketing assets regularly. I want to take a moment to explain what we mean by that and why it's so important. Most of the marketing that you do for your law firm, if you're like most attorneys, falls into the category of expense. The nature of most advertising is that you buy it, it gets used up, and then it's gone forever. Let's look at some examples of marketing that fall into the expense categories. Yellow page advertising is an expense. You pay for it, it runs for a year, people throw the book away, and it's gone. Billboard advertising, also an expense. Same with radio and TV advertising. These are clear-cut examples. But online, it's not always so obvious. When you rent a directory listing or pay for a sponsored listing or what some people call a premium spot, you're essentially renting disposable advertising. And this is an expense because if you don't renew it and continue to pay, it goes away. Pay-per-click advertising is also an expense. You make a bid for a customer of a search engine to essentially click on your ad, and when they do, the money is gone forever. And it doesn't matter if it's a potential client with estate planning needs, a competitor of yours, or a marketer who's clicking to try to sell you even more services. Same thing with banner ads, remarketing ads, magazine ads, social media ads, etc. online. But content placed on a website that you own and that you control is a marketing asset because once the content is produced, it can continue to produce business for you indefinitely. Think of it like owning a building in a prime location with great signage. Once that building is owned and the sign is paid off, each additional impression that it makes on the public that passes by costs you nothing. Well, nothing aside from the cost that it takes to maintain the building, the maintenance, the taxes, and so forth. With content, you invest your efforts and dollars once, and if done well, your potential clients interact with it for years to come. With LawLytics, you own your website and your content, and we're here to help you strategically maintain and grow that infrastructure around your content. It's important to note that just because you create content online doesn't always mean that you own it. For example, if you're writing answers for legal directories or forums that you don't own, you're investing in creating assets for the owner of that website. And to benefit from those assets, you likely will have to pay. If not now, then eventually. Because directory businesses, whether they're in law or not, are typically there to make money. And so ultimately, if you don't end up paying, then your ad gets removed, your content stays there, and the effort that you put into the content, and sometimes your name as well, if it's signed by you, will be there attached to advertising that one of your competitors is paying for. And this is a topic that could, in and of itself, more than fill a 2-hour webinar. And if you want to go deeper into it, Google commoditization of lawyers and read a piece that should come up number 1 or 2 that I wrote several years ago. It's even more relevant today than it was back then because it's continued to evolve, and it's especially poignant for estate planning attorneys. Because here at LawLytics we're obsessed with helping lawyers find the most efficient ways to market their firms online, and because we're sticklers about not letting attorneys waste their time or their money, it bears repeating that everything that LawLytics does and everything that we help you do is geared towards creating appreciating marketing assets that you own and control. In a few moments, Tori, Rachel, and Sophia will each talk with you about various aspects of the appreciating asset that is your law firm's website. Before I turn the floor over to Victoria, I want to spend a few more moments talking about content. So what is content marketing, and why should estate planning lawyers be doing it? Most lawyers think they need a thing called SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. Search engine optimization is about making it easier for potential clients to find your law firm through free search engine results. Content marketing is the most important ingredient in SEO. And without high-quality content, no other aspect of SEO will ever work or be effective. When you sit across the desk from a potential estate planning client, engaging in that initial conversation, you're engaging in a discovery process. You're evaluating their needs, their goals, their situation, and your potential client is evaluating you, whether they've hired you or paying for the consultation, or whether you're just having an initial consultation to see whether they want to do business with you and vice versa. There's some mutual evaluation going on there. But you're also engaged in marketing and sales during that process. And everything that you say about your firm and yourself and their matter, everything that you say in general guides their perception of you and your firm. Everything that they see in your office, from the way that your front entry desk is situated, to the carpeting, to the degrees on the walls, to the books on the bookshelf, everything that they see helps them create a story about who you are and helps them decide whether they want to do business with you, and in the process of doing business with you, how much they trust what you're going to be telling them. Content marketing is about preloading your potential client's perception about you and your firm. The information that you would normally provide them at the first meeting, to the extent that you can put that on your firm's website without actually giving them the documents that they would need to do it themselves, the better. And here's why. Your potential estate planning clients are searching for answers as much as they're searching for an attorney or for an instrument to get done. They don't understand the nuances of it. They don't understand how complex these things can be. They don't understand the difference necessarily between one instrument and another, or between a form that they fill in and an attorney who will guide them through the process and counsel them on all of the implications. When you provide them with helpful answers on your website, as opposed to keyword-based nonsense and self-serving marketing copy, something very efficient happens. The search engines give it preference, which causes your potential clients to find it, and what they find is directly responsive to the questions they have about their financial situation, their loved one's situation, their rights, their taxation issues, whatever the case may be. They find those answers, and they instantly know that you care, they know that you know, and that because they're getting that information from you, they also suspect that you're successful. and you can use your website to further bolster that by giving them social proof in the form of results that you've achieved and in the form of client testimonials. This causes them to trust you before they ever speak with you, and it's because you've already helped them without ever having met them. And because of this, they become much more likely to hire you. And when they do hire you, the effect of it is they become much easier to manage and guide through the process as clients because their knowledge and expectations are already aligned with what it is that you do. In the next two segments of this webinar, Victoria and Rachel are going to detail the basics of getting started on the right track with high-quality content for your estate planning practice. And with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Victoria, who's going to talk about the basics of the search engines and how to start building your estate planning web presence. Tori?
Thanks, Dan. Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Good morning and good afternoon to those of you who are on the East Coast. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Victoria Blute and I'm a community manager here at LawLytics. My job is to keep attorneys on the cutting edge of web technologies and online legal marketing and help you learn what works on the web. So now that Dan has discussed a little bit about the foundational aspects of marketing your estate planning practice, I'm going to explain to you how your potential clients use the internet. We're also going to talk about how they don't use the internet. That is just as important. We're going to talk about how to recognize some of the myths that go along with online legal marketing and what you need to attract potential clients to your firm. And a lot of that starts with understanding some terminology and understanding how the internet works. So the first slide that I want to discuss is going to set the tone for a lot of what I'm going to be talking about. And it's important whether or not you're familiar with this term. If you are, you may want to check your assumptions about this term and see if it is in alignment with what I'm talking about. And that term Dan mentioned, and that's SEO. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. And while I've heard it described a number of ways, some of those descriptions being fairly accurate, other ones being completely off the mark, I think the best way to describe SEO is to say that it is the process of growing your website's visibility in organic search engine results. So, in other words, helping more potential clients find you on search engines. For those of you who are familiar with this term and with this idea, this may seem like a rather obvious description, and I may end up discussing some topics that seem quite basic, but it's important to bring it up because attorneys sometimes get caught in the trap of understanding what SEO is as it is defined here, but making some mistakes in how that process is carried out. So if you have some preconceived notions about how this works, check to see if they're in alignment with what I'm going to say. And if this is all new to you, if you're starting with a blank slate, that is great too. So let's first talk about how search engines work, and then let's talk about how your potential clients are using those search engines to find you. So search engines work by finding, gathering, and displaying relevant information to those who are searching for it. And when Google began as a company, their founders said that they wanted to organize all of the world's information, and that is sort of how we got to where we are today. There are three basic steps here that search engines go through, and if you hear me say Google a lot instead of just search engines in general, know that the process is similar for all search engines, but I say Google because it is the most popular search engine. They hold the dominant market share. People certainly, of course, do use Bing and Yahoo search, but there is a reason that Google is also a verb, as in to Google, and that's because it's the best and most popular method for finding information. Okay, so step one is crawling, and you're going to hear sometimes other terms for crawling. You'll hear crawlers referred to as Google's spiders or bots. Whatever you want to call that, Google has these bots that are busy crawling the web, and what I mean when I say crawling is to say that these robots are following links from page to page and from link to link to see what is there, and then Google sorts those pages by the content that's featured on them and some other factors. Once Google finds a web page and figures out what's on there, it then adds that page to its massive 100 million gigabyte index. And Google does this so that it can quickly access that information again when a search engine user makes a relevant query. The last step in this process is retrieval, and that's what all the crawling and the indexing is for. At this point, Google gets a query and then quickly decides what information is most relevant to that question. And then it pulls that information from its index and delivers those pages as search results. So, for example, if somebody searches for how do I know whether I need a will or a living trust, or something like how do you change a will for a mentally incompetent adult, Google is then going to search through its index looking for the most relevant answer to that question. Now, how Google makes a decision about what results are the most relevant, that is to some degree shrouded in mystery. There are hundreds of different factors in that decision. They all hold different weight, and Google doesn't tell us about what those are exactly. But the company has famously said that they want you to make websites for people, not for search engines. So if you're going to make a website for a person and not for a search engine, just exactly how do you do that? And what that requires is an understanding of how people, or in this case your potential estate planning clients, actually use search engines. And this is an area where there can be a little bit of a disconnect for attorneys, but once you understand how this works and you're able to put that information into action, this is where your marketing can really take off. So let's talk about how your potential clients use search engines to find you. For this slide, let's start with a hypothetical scenario. So for a moment, I want you to imagine that you are a potential estate planning client. In your mind, map the route that you would take from needing an attorney to finding your law firm's website and contacting that law firm. What does it look like? Here is what we hear from a lot of attorneys, and we're going to use an estate planning attorney as an example. So check to see if your answer looks something like this. Step one, my potential client opens their laptop. They go to Google, and then because they need an estate planning attorney in Atlanta, they conduct a search for estate planning attorney Atlanta. They find my website because I'm an estate planning attorney in Atlanta, and then they contact my law firm. Does your answer look something like this? If it does, this is a common misunderstanding that some attorneys have when they think about how potential clients search for them online. They assume the path to successful online legal marketing works in this way, but when they think that it works in this way, they tend to end up quite frustrated and spending a lot of money and time on things that they don't need and things that don't work. So to do your marketing efficiently and to do it cost effectively online, there is one major component that you need, and Dan talked about that earlier, and that's this, content. So the very shortest answer to explain what SEO is really about and how to attract potential clients is to say that your website needs content. And we're going to talk about content in depth, but to understand why content is the answer, we have to understand why that hypothetical scenario that we just discussed doesn't make any sense. So in that example, we've got three possible assumptions. The first is to say that potential clients usually know that they need an estate planning attorney before they conduct a search. The second is that potential clients usually search for attorneys directly. And the third is that potential clients usually conduct basic keyword searches to find an estate planning attorney. Now, there's a fourth assumption here, and that is that your potential client is using a laptop rather than a mobile device. Mobile-friendly sites are something that we're going to discuss a little bit later. Let's look at each of those assumptions and see why that's not how clients use search engines, and also how content is the right online marketing solution here. So, first assumption is that potential clients usually know that they need an estate planning attorney before they conduct a search. This is not necessarily true. Potential clients do not always realize that they need an attorney before they go to Google. What they do often know is that they've got some sort of problem or question and they're not sure how to solve it. So they open their laptops and go to Google. That much at least is true. And then they're likely to conduct some question-based searches. So instead of searching these basic keyword terms like estate planning attorney Atlanta or wills lawyer Atlanta, a potential client may ask a complex question. They may ask whether, do they need a will or do they need a trust, or how can I make sure that my children get my home or my car or my savings when I pass away, those kinds of questions. Some potential clients may suspect that they need an estate planning attorney, but they may still do research about how their current problem could affect them or their loved ones, and that research may go on for a while. They may ask if they have to put a lot of money into a living trust at the start, or any number of questions related to your area of practice. And the thing that links their question and the results that Google returns and your estate planning practice is content. So remember that when somebody asks Google a question, Google's main focus is to return the most relevant results for the person who made that search. And this is what Google is talking about when it says that you should make websites for people and not for search engines. Because it's people who need answers, and Google provides them. And they want the best content that they can offer their users. It's the entire basis of their business model. Google is the dominant search engine because they provide the best answers of any search engine out there. And if your website is providing insightful content that answers the questions that your potential clients are asking, that is how you increase not only your visibility, but your ability to actually connect with those potential clients and to build your practice. Okay, the second assumption is that potential clients usually search for attorneys directly. Again, not true. Potential clients do not always search for attorneys directly, and this is a flawed assumption that people sometimes make, because it assumes that potential clients search for an attorney in the same way that somebody might search for a t-shirt brand at a local store. So somebody might search for Hanes T-shirts Target San Diego, and the intent there is to see if a local Target has that t-shirt brand in stock. But we have to keep in mind that a t-shirt is a consumer product. That person likely knows roughly what they want, they know where they want to buy it. It's a very easy sort of decision. Choosing an estate planning attorney is not that easy. It's an important decision, it's a complex process, and it's one that has real effects for the potential client. And despite the attempted commoditization of things like estate planning attorneys by the legal marketing industry, attorneys are not consumer products, and potential clients don't search for attorneys in the same way that they might for a shirt. The third assumption is that potential clients usually conduct basic keyword searches to find an attorney. So in that example we were just talking about, the basic keyword search was estate planning attorney Atlanta. Consider for a moment the basic keyword search for Hanes T-shirts Target. So this example assumes that a person will conduct a vague search. Maybe the intent here is that the person just wants to see if Target carries Hanes T-shirts, but if that person already knows what they want, they are much more likely to conduct a highly specific search. So think about the different results you get by searching for Hanes T-shirt Target versus something like this, versus Hanes men's V-neck white t-shirt size XL Target San Diego. That first search is going to bring you a lot of different results about a lot of different shirts. The second search is going to very quickly tell you whether or not that store has exactly the size and color and style of shirt that you are looking for. People do not want to sift through results. They want an immediate answer, and really in the digital age this is what they've come to expect. And the same goes for your potential clients when they ask questions of Google. They are not likely to search for estate planning attorney and then scan through hundreds of pages of results. They've got a specific question about the problem that they're facing, and they want an answer to that problem. And of course, when potential clients are asking those specific questions, Google is going to attempt to provide specific results for them. When you answer those questions with quality content on your law firm's website and on your blog, you are much more likely to be found in search engine results because your content closely matches the questions that your potential clients are asking. And by giving them the information that they need, you're much more likely to create a bond of trust that encourages them to contact your law firm. So here's an example of how law firm SEO actually works for attorneys. A potential client opens their laptop, they go to Google, and they conduct a search like this. Is a will or a living trust better for giving half of my assets to charity and half to relatives? And let's say that you've written a blog post about this topic with lots of useful information. You write the blog post in language that the potential client uses. It makes it easy for them to understand. They read what you have to say, and it helps to answer their question. And maybe now that they're visiting your law firm's blog, they look around and they read other content that you've written. And with estate planning, this is a process that may go on for a little while. There may be cases in which someone immediately decides to contact your firm, and there may be cases where someone returns to your website again and again to read what you're writing over time before they make that decision. But when what you've written is helpful and informative, your potential client begins to build that bond of trust with you. Your content demonstrates that you understand the problem that they're facing and that you know what the potential client should do to get the best outcome. And they reach out to you when they want more information or they're ready to hire you at that point. Now, this is an example of how your potential clients actually use search engines and how they're likely to connect with you online. There is one point I would like to make quickly, and that is this. So, I know earlier I said that your potential clients don't usually type in basic keywords. And let me first say that words like estate planning attorney or wills lawyer are keywords related to your practice. However, competing for rank with those words alone can just be astronomically difficult, both in organic search and if you choose to do pay-per-click advertising. Legal terms are notoriously among the most expensive and sought after. So how can a small law firm rank for those kinds of terms? The answer to that is by adding those terms to long-tail keywords and phrases and using those long-tail keywords in specific places on your website and blog. Here is a quick doodle I did this morning that explains why long-tail keywords are effective for estate planning practices. Long-tail keywords are those that are incorporated into a more complex question or phrase that narrows down the window and creates a more specific search. And this is really how many people search online. What this diagram illustrates is the value in going after those long-tail keywords. So on the y-axis we have the degree of competition and cost for a keyword. The higher on the y-axis, the higher the cost, the higher the competition for such a keyword. On the x-axis, we have the likelihood that a potential client converts, or in this case, contacts your firm. And the further left you are, the less likely an individual is to convert. Let's look at a single word phrase like you see here in green for attorney. That is a very, very, very non-specific keyword for which there is a lot of competition, not a lot of likelihood for conversion. Nobody in their right mind types in the word attorney and then scrolls through pages and pages of results. If we get slightly more specific with estate planning attorney or Atlanta wills lawyer, like you see here in orange, this is more specific than attorney, but it's still a highly sought after term, and it's maybe only slightly more likely to convert somebody who searches for it. Again, potential clients usually don't search this way. Let's look at the part in blue. So here we have highly descriptive, specific phrases. These are the kinds of questions that your potential clients are likely to ask. These ones have a much higher likelihood of converting people because they directly address the kinds of questions that potential clients are asking. There is far less competition for these terms, and there are millions of long-tail keyword phrases that you can target. With so much competition for some popular keywords, it is nearly impossible to have a new law firm website that ranks organically for these popular terms. And if you pay to compete for those terms through disposable advertising like pay-per-click advertising, you may really be paying a lot of money to compete for web visitors who may or may not click on your ads and may or may not be potential clients for your law firm. Attorneys need to also consider that potential clients have ad blindness. People are so bombarded every day with messages all over the place that they don't even see them anymore. And of course, ad blockers have made that easier than ever. It's made it easier than ever for people to ignore your ads. And that's even outside of regular ad blindness. That's really a new element in the mix where you may be trying to advertise to people who are never even going to see your ads. Now, I'm sure that some of you have this question, and that is, can I only compete for long-tail keywords? And the answer to that is no. There are small law firms that rank very well for popular law firm keywords, ones like wills lawyer or estate planning attorney. But how they got there is often a byproduct of publishing a lot of original, useful content that's related to those terms. And that content is likely in the form of long-tail keywords and phrases. For example, a small law firm may not be able to compete for a term like estate planning attorney, but that attorney can compete for related searches when they write a significant volume of content that addresses questions like, where can I learn about what can or can't be included in a will, or can I prepare estate planning documents myself? And in these instances, it's where you're not only optimizing for the extremely specific phrase, but you're also optimizing for the basic attorney-related terms that those phrases contain. And I should mention here also that one of the major things that Google is working on right now with algorithms like RankBrain and others is the artificial intelligence aspect of search, particularly understanding intent. So when that potential client makes a search like this one, or like any of the other specific ones that we've discussed, or one that doesn't even necessarily use the word estate planning, Google is trying to understand if that person may be looking for an estate planning attorney. Okay, so now that we've talked about how all of this actually works, let's talk a little bit about some SEO-related myths. This is often where attorneys get tripped up, and there's no reason for them to. So now that you understand a little bit more about how the internet works and how your potential clients actually use search engines, the reason why these myths don't make sense and can cost your firm a lot of wasted time and money, I think will start to make sense to you. So the first myth that I want to address is what happens when somebody promises you that they can provide you with quick results. And by that I mean somebody telling you that you can rank for an incredibly popular keyword in a few weeks, these kinds of promises. Even the best law firm SEO strategist doesn't have any control over what Google or any of the other search engines do. And building up your content takes some time. It's not this one-and-done magical sort of process. It's something you're always going to be working on and continually adding to. So if somebody tells you that they can get your law firm to the quote-unquote top of Google in 3 weeks, there is just no way. And that brings me to my next point, and that's the promise of the top of Google. I assure you there is no such thing. These two things are related to each other in that they have to do with the myth of overnight success. For any Google search that you make, we know there is a #1 ranking position, but there is no top of Google. If you search for a basic keyword phrase like estate planning attorney Los Angeles or Atlanta or wherever, the results that you are going to receive are going to be different based on the day that you search, the location that you search from, the browser that you're using, the device that you're using, among other factors. And just about the only thing that's going to be the same about any potential client who does that search is that all the results that they get are going to be different. To assume that potential clients search for basic keyword phrases like the ones we've just discussed, and that they know they need an attorney and search for exactly those terms, that is not always the case. Potential clients often search by asking Google questions about their case or problem. Those questions may include basic keyword terms, but those basic terms, as we've often learned, are often nestled into long-tail phrases. And a majority of daily searches are completely unique. For each unique search, you get a unique set of search results. The next myth is that SEO for estate planning attorneys is complicated or that you don't have the time to learn it. And that, of course, is untrue. You are going to learn a large part of what you need to know today just by sitting here. And as you can see, what's more complicated than writing content is trying to struggle with methods and tactics that don't work or that are based on false assumptions. That is far more complicated than taking the time right now to know what works and to build on that from the beginning. Next up is the special relationship with Google. This is one that comes up every once in a while, whether you have somebody cold calling your firm to tell you that they have a special relationship with Google and that they can get you to the top of Google in a week, or that they know something special about a Google algorithm update. All that is nonsense. Now, let me say that you can be, as a marketer, you can be a Google partner. You can resell Google products like PPC ads or Google apps, but none of those things are going to help you, the estate planning attorney, with your SEO. The last myth is that there is a secret to ranking well. So, as I said earlier, Google's ranking factors and the weights of those factors are secret, but what's absolutely not a secret, and it's never been a secret, is that Google wants you to write lots of quality content for your website so that they can provide it to people who are making related searches to that. They want to be able to provide the best content, and that is what they're looking for. So when you write useful, insightful content that helps your potential clients, and when you do that on a regular basis, Google is paying attention. And what that can lead to is being rewarded with better placement in search engine results. So the only secret that there might be, in my opinion, is that content is really the key, and if you're not writing it, your competitors are going to be. So here are some other common myths. These are older ones. They date back to the early days of search engines, and yet they continue to be persistent, so that's why I bring them up. Keyword meta tags. So early on, meta tags were actually an important part of the SEO process, and for those of you who don't remember this, what you would do at that time is that you would include the keyword meta tags that you wanted your site to rank for, and those pages would come up in results for relevant queries. Unfortunately, this process was very quickly used and abused by spammers, and so much so that it got dropped as an important signal, because what it did was it frustrated users who were looking for actual information, and that is in direct conflict with what Google is trying to do. They don't have a business if they can't provide people with the best search results for the questions that they have, and it's why they have worked so hard and are continuing to work so hard on algorithm updates to ensure that people who are trying to cheat the system cannot do so. That more web pages are equivalent to better ranking. This is not true. So not only is this myth untrue, it's one of those that can also harm your law firm's web presence. More pages, not always equivalent to a better search engine ranking. Now, there are large law firm websites that rank well with the search engines, and these law firm websites do have thousands and thousands of pages, but the key difference here is that those pages are filled with useful content for potential clients, and they have been built up over time with that quality content. Someone didn't hastily assemble these pages. They carefully crafted them to provide potential clients with the information that is the most important to them. A website can be large in terms of the number of pages that it has, but simply adding pages without good content to support them can be a recipe for trouble. Publishing lots of pages without the quality content necessary to make those pages valuable to web users is quite unlikely to bring your law firm better rankings, and in fact it may even hurt your website's rankings. I pulled a quote from Google's Webmaster Guidelines, which I absolutely recommend that estate planning attorneys go check out and read. It is a really important feature of doing well online to understand what Google really wants from you. But what this quote said is this: one of the most important steps in improving your site's ranking in Google search results is to ensure that it contains plenty of rich information that includes relevant keywords used appropriately that indicate the subject matter of your content. However, some webmasters attempt to improve their page's ranking and attract visitors by creating pages with many words but little or no authentic content. Google will take action against domains that try to rank more highly just by showing scraped or other cookie-cutter pages that don't add substantial value to users. So again, Google is saying make pages for users, not for search engines. And I really do recommend that each of you take the time to go see Google's Webmaster Guidelines and see what they're asking of you. The next myth here is overvaluing keywords or keyword stuffing. And this is a very persistent myth that really causes attorneys to struggle. And whether this is a matter of obsessing over the top keywords or stuffing keywords into your web pages, this is another thing that can damage your web presence. For those of you who aren't familiar with this term, keyword stuffing has to do with the myth of keyword density. There are people who still think that how many times a keyword shows up on a page has absolutely everything to do with how search engines determine relevancy and ranking, and that's simply not true. This is one of those myths that has been proven not to be true over and over again, but there are SEO providers who still push this myth. Okay, last one. Spending money on pay-per-click advertising or any kind of paid search is unlikely to improve your organic rankings. In fact, search engines have done work to ensure that this doesn't happen. There is no special access or consideration provided by search engines for those who spend money, or as it often happens in the case of pay-per-click, spend more and more money. Now, we've covered a lot of the big myths that surround online legal marketing. Let's go back to the big thing that your website needs, and that's content. Attorneys, whether they realize it or not, have a content problem, and it's one that's illustrated by this little diagram here. So to do successful online marketing, an intrinsic part of that, of engaging potential clients and getting business online, is content. You need content, you likely need a lot of it. And if you haven't been to our website, we do have a number of free on-demand webinars that carefully detail what you need to do to plan your content, to blog, to write for the web, so feel free to check those out. But the point here is that you need content, and so you're going to have to make some decisions about that. Now, if you want to write your own content, that's great. And at LawLytics, we can show you how to write it the right way, in the way that will attract your potential clients. So if you want to write it, great. Now, if you're not going to write it, that puts you in one of two positions. Either you've got to delegate it to somebody else, and you've got to delegate it the right way to someone who understands what you do as an estate planning attorney, and if you do that, you'll be in good shape. The alternative is that you don't delegate, and the longer that you wait to do that, the longer that you wait to write to engage your potential clients who are looking for you online, the more time that you're wasting and the more opportunities that you're missing. And at that point, your competitors are going to be getting ahead writing the content that you are not. So we see it as axiomatic that you need content. It really just comes down to deciding who's going to write it. In the content that you'll write, an underlying goal should be to compel your potential clients to reach out to you. And the way to do that isn't simply to say, call my law firm now, but it's to connect to them through your writing. Your content should inspire confidence in them, that you know what you're talking about, that you're the right attorney to assist them with their problem, that they can trust you. After all, people who are seeking estate planning attorneys may be frustrated or worried about where their finances are going to go, or worried for a parent and what it could mean for their family's future. And your potential client needs to know that if they choose you, that they can really trust you to work and to fight for the best possible outcome. And you're also trying to convey sameness. Your potential clients are not just looking for an attorney, they are looking for a human who also practices the law and really understands their problem and gets where they're coming from and has empathy for their situation. So here's what your content should do. It should show your potential clients that you know what you're talking about, so establishing subject matter expertise. And you can do that in both your website's substantive content and also in blog posts, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. But make sure that you do it in a way that a layperson can understand, because potential clients may not come from a legal background. And while you, as an attorney, you are familiar with the terms of art, they likely are not. Legalese can be very confusing and frustrating, and potential clients will often search for terms that are not necessarily what you would use as an attorney, but it's their way of trying to understand what's going on. So also show them that you're passionate and you're interested in them and their problem. And part of that is publishing new content on a regular basis, because nothing says I am not interested in what I do, like a blog that's been abandoned or a website that doesn't have new content that's published often. And they also need to understand that the problem that they're facing is complex, but it's one that you are uniquely suited to help them solve. Content can show up in a lot of different forms, and these are the basic structural elements that you'll feature on your website. The text, of course, is the most basic part of your website, and before you start delving into bells and whistles like video and audio, it's very important to have a strong, well-established foundation of text content. Once you have that established, then you can start thinking about enhancements like infographics and video, which do add to your web presence, and they really can be helpful educational tools for your potential clients, but that written content foundation is what has to come first. So there are three basic kinds of content. There is blog content, we have substantive content, it's also sometimes referred to as evergreen content, and lastly reputational content. Each of these are different from each other and they serve different purposes, so we're going to discuss why that is and why you need to develop each of these. Let's start with blog content. So, whether the idea of blogging for your law firm is completely new to you or you know that you need to blog and you haven't gotten around to it yet, blogging is one of the most efficient and effective ways to market your firm for a number of reasons. A blog for your estate planning law firm helps your practice stay relevant. Many potential clients use the web to find their attorney, and a lack of participation online can raise some red flags for potential clients. At this point in history, they expect to find you online, they expect to find you participating in the online discussion. Blogging on a regular basis allows you to consistently connect with potential clients while creating discourse about a variety of topics related to your practice area. It helps to answer the questions that potential clients have, and it helps to build that bond of trust. If you are worried about traffic and rankings and search engine optimization, a lot of lawyers are. You are not alone in that. But one question that we often get here at LawLytics is from attorneys who ask us, my SEO strategy doesn't seem to be working. How can I improve my traffic and my rankings? And a follow-up question that we often ask is, how often are you blogging? When SEO strategy isn't working, what it can often be attributed to is a lack of blogging, and that's whether that's infrequent blogging or no blogging at all. By writing blogs on a regular basis, you can improve your traffic. The more quality content that you write, the more opportunities Google's bots or spiders or crawlers or whatever you want to call them see to come back to your website and to index that new material for the relevant queries of potential clients. They are always looking for new material. Blogging makes you and your firm unique. It helps to build relationships with potential clients. It sets you apart from lawyers who aren't blogging, but above all, it's a place to show your potential clients that you care about the questions that they're asking and that you're devoting individual blog posts to answering those questions. It gives you a space to give your opinion, to make commentary, and to keep people returning to your website. Another thing attorneys will want to consider about blogging is that with an increasing number of small firms being eaten up by larger firms, you'll want to make sure that your presence is unique and priceless, even in the face of a merger. And that is where thought leadership comes in. Blogging isn't just an appreciating asset for your firm, it's an asset for you personally. So if the time comes to trim the proverbial fat when a merger happens, a larger firm may not cut an individual who's amassed a large following with a blog. Blogs establish you as a thought leader, somebody who is an authority in their field and uniquely influential. Because blogs are highly effective in connecting with potential clients and then turning them into your clients, a blog is a major asset for your law firm, for you, for your financial security, and for your future. So now that you know a little bit more about blogging, keep in mind that at the LawLytics website we have a lot of free resources for you to look at if you need blog topic inspiration or you're ready to start thinking about things like content planning. And we'll revisit blogging a little bit later as well. Substantive content. So substantive content is the meat of your website, and this is sometimes also referred to as evergreen content. It's the content that will remain consistent and consistently relevant for your readership for a long time. Here are some of the areas that constitute substantive pages, and they can really be divided into one of two categories. The first is pages that are about you, so the About Your Firm page, your attorney bio or bios if you have more than one attorney, your office location or locations, recommendations from happy former clients, and other things like case results that demonstrate your capability. The second category is the pages that are about your potential clients and about the problem that they're facing. So that includes practice area pages, detailed law pages that explain important aspects about the law in the place where you live, local pages that help you strategically target your specific local audience, frequently asked questions pages that help things like client expectation management, as well as case studies pages. So let's start with this topic, about your firm. A lot of times we see about your firm pages that are very conservative, and maybe they're just a series of facts about the firm. But that is not very engaging to your potential clients. So think about how on your firm's page, and that's aside from the individual bio pages, how are you going to refer to yourself? Are you going to talk about yourself in the first person? Are you going to choose third person? And there are benefits and drawbacks to each. I actually wrote a blog post about this in mid-November about when you may want to choose first, second, or third person, so feel free to check that out if you need some help deciding or you're just curious about the various considerations. But as you're writing the page, ask yourself if this really sets you apart from other estate planning attorneys. What makes your firm unique? What's your unique selling proposition? Does it get to the heart of who you are? Does it let your audience get to know you? And that takes us to a related page, which is your attorney bio. So your attorney bio is one of the most visited and one of the most important pages on your site. And it can be a powerful business generator, but only when that page is written the right way. And to do that requires a little bit of thought. One thing that we see that often happens with attorney bios is that attorneys are tempted to rattle off a long list of facts about their educational history, about their accolades, their awards, and so on and so forth. And there's a place for that, and there's a way to do that. But the trick to writing an attorney bio that really converts potential clients is not to talk about your accomplishments in the way that you might to another attorney, but to think about this in the context of what it means to your potential clients. So let's take a look at what potential clients actually care about. So it's important to understand how your potential clients and your referral sources approach the information that they are consuming about you. And before your potential clients and referral sources consider your accomplishments, they want to know about you as a person. It's like that old saying that goes that people won't care about what you know until they know how much you care. Here, this is very, very fitting. Aside from knowing how much you care about what you do, your potential clients also want to know how enthusiastic you are, how intense your interest is in your practice, in them, in their problem. And once they know that you care about them, that you care about what you do, then they want to know about what you've done. So here's a way to think about this. First, write about your journey to the law. So you need to show potential clients that you care about them, their case, and your practice. So consider answering some of the following questions. How did you get to where you are right now? Why is it that you chose to handle the cases that you do? The types of cases that your potential client is wondering if you can help them with. What inspired you to become a lawyer? What inspired your career path? What happened during your formative years to make you decide that you wanted to practice the law? What motivates you as an attorney and as a person? And the deeper that you can dig for things that motivate you outside of just winning or making money, the more you can make it about your potential client, about your success being dependent upon the valuable benefit that you provide to potential clients, the more relatable you make yourself to a prospective client. And it's about things like getting a client through a difficult situation with peace of mind. So ask yourself, what drives you to do it and what inspires you? Who do you surround yourself with? Potential clients want to know who you surround yourself with, and not just in the law, though that's important too, but also in your everyday life. So what kind of extracurricular activities are you a part of? Do you support some kind of youth group? Are you a member of charities? What do you do to give back to the community? What helps you define yourself outside of the law. People will often read more into who you are based on the company that you keep more than anything that you say on your bio. Who have you helped? So LawLytics provides a special module for doing your attorney bios and a separate special module for case results, things that you've done within the law to help people. We also provide a separate special module for recommendations from your clients and peers, but that's not what we're talking about here. Your attorney bio isn't a place for discussing individual cases, but instead to discuss cases more generally. Think about the type of person that you typically help. You want to paint a picture of who you've helped and why you enjoyed doing that. Lastly, what have you done? So talk about what you've accomplished in your law career and your education. What qualifies you? And this can be honors, case results, publications, but attorneys tend to just list these things. So instead of just listing those, talk about what they mean to you. Take a publication, for example. Talk about what it means to you to have been selected, how the selection process worked, and why it's a big deal. So give it some context. For example, maybe you've been selected as a top lawyer in your area by a local magazine. What went into that? What was the criteria? How do they define it? What does it mean to you? Remember that what may be obvious to you is not necessarily obvious to your potential client, especially if they don't come from a legal background. The reality is many potential clients don't understand those various terms of art that attorneys use to compare themselves to one another. So if you're AV rated, it's good to explain what that means. If you've got a perfect score of 10 on AVA, what does it mean? What have you done to earn it? How many clients have you helped? What do you typically do during the process? And this by no means is an exhaustive list, but the more of these things that you write about in your attorney bio, the more ideas you're going to have for other things to talk about. An office location page sounds simple, and they can be, but they can be much more than just an address and a phone number. You know and I know that your potential clients need to know your address and your phone number, but there's also a lot of extra information that they need that you can give them. They need maps, they need to know if you have multiple locations, maybe you have different attorneys at each location, they need to know that too. They need to know who they can expect when they go to a location. Then consider adding relevant facts. How do you get there? Will your potential client need their parking validated? Are there certain landmarks they should be looking for? Is your office hard to find? Be sure to add pictures too. This really makes things much more comfortable for your potential clients. And as you create this content, you make an impression on your potential client that you care about making it as easy as possible for them to find you and to get what they need. Recommendations. So recommendations are important points of proof. There's no better way of proving to your potential clients and your referral sources that you can do a good job for them than to have other people say that you've done a good job for them in the past. And you'll want to write a good lead-in to your recommendations page, but you can add something to each recommendation that makes it more than just somebody saying that you did a great job. Context here is really important. As an example, let's say that somebody writes a nice recommendation about you, but it's fairly non-specific. Maybe they say, I chose this attorney for my mother who needed to create a will, and this attorney did a great job for us. Thank you so much. Here it's important to add extra details in your recommendations that explain the context and give it more substance. For that very, very non-specific recommendation. Give it more weight and help it make more sense to the potential client who's reading it. An important aspect of writing better case results is understanding what they're meant to do, not just what they're supposed to contain. When you know what purpose your case results serve, that's the point at which you can write compelling stories that humanize you and drive your potential clients to reach out to you. Your case results, as I said, should inspire confidence, they should engender trust, and they should convey sameness between you and your potential client. Your potential clients are going to read those case results with themselves in mind. They're going to put themselves into the shoes of the clients that are the subject of your results. And that's why more than simply listing the outcome, it's important to Explain why you fought so hard and worked so hard and why it matters in the context of the client that you helped. So let's look at an example of how to tell a compelling story. So start with the facts. Here's an example. Let's say that in this hypothetical situation, you've got a family who seeks your assistance in trying to do some estate planning for one of their parents. There's real estate involved and step-parents involved and maybe some substantial assets that could cause a lot of fighting. It's a very emotional sort of topic. Describe your client's frustrations. Make the situation that your client was facing real and relatable to the person who's reading that story. What sort of things are at stake? Why is it that as an attorney you felt the need to take on this case and put your energy into it? What were the motivations of your potential client and what are your motivations? And where do those motivations intersect? Your potential clients want to know that your motivations are in alignment with theirs. It's sort of the how much do you care part of the pyramid. Next, the challenges. So this is where your enthusiasm comes in. What were the odds or the obstacles that you faced in this case? How did you prepare for it? It's not a matter of just saying what you did, but also how you got there. When you talk just about the conclusion, your potential client may not understand how much work went into the final result. And as you're talking about how you prepared, talk about why you cared about that case so much that it becomes clear to the person who's reading that you'd also care about their case. Then we have the quest. So the details matter, they do, and that's regardless of what sort of problem or case that you're dealing with. The details go a long way towards convincing potential clients that you are the right person for the job. As a note, you don't necessarily want to put your bio here, but you can connect your client's story to your bio that ties things together nicely without necessarily restating it. You may want to include a link to your attorney bio here as well. And then lastly, the result. Now, this is often where most attorneys start when they talk about success stories, but without understanding the facts and the challenges and the journey that you took to get the result, potential clients may not understand this part without that context. So once you've built up the other elements, then talk about your results. And don't just talk about the legal result. Talk about how the result impacted your client's life. Like in this example, say that the end result is, despite all the various factors and assets at play, you were able to sort out this complex family issue and financial situation such that, let's say, when the family patriarch or matriarch does pass away, that this advanced planning was able to keep the family members from any added heartache or fighting. And the deeper that you go, the more relatable it is to your potential client. But the end result doesn't just benefit your potential client. So after you've talked about the general results, talk about how it better armed you to serve your clients in the future. How did this case continue to prepare you for your next potential client's case? Your previous successes as an attorney, these are important points of social proof. They can inspire your potential clients to have confidence in your work, to engage you, and ultimately to hire you. And case results, when they're written correctly, can be even more valuable than recommendations from former clients or other lawyers. Unfortunately, what happens so often is that attorneys will list case results on their law firm websites as these 1- or 2-line summaries that may not mean much to your potential clients and don't encourage them to reach out to you. But if you write your case results the right way, they can become these very powerful stories that speak to your potential clients and inspire them to seek your assistance. What we see most often on law firm websites are these single-page lists, so many results, not a lot of detail, victories, verdict amounts, those sorts of things. But these things don't mean a whole lot to your potential clients out of context. So I'll say it again, context is very important. When you're writing your results, really think about a compelling story that's going to encourage your potential clients to want to contact you. Practice area pages. So this is an area that Rachel is going to discuss in detail momentarily, but this is where most attorney websites really begin. What we recommend is going a lot deeper than just the practice area pages. So for your practice area, you want to describe it in terms that a layperson can understand. Then you want to give a simple overview of each area and then maybe drill down into the specifics. That gives your potential clients a very important choice, and that choice is how they want to consume that content. Do they want to read a basic overview of something? Maybe they want to read the overview first and then they want to know something very specific about the problem that they're facing. And that leads us to detailed law pages. So this is where you're drilling down into the detailed pages. And this is also where you can really spend a lot of time and a lot of words getting more and more specific. Do not be discouraged by the idea that a potential client is only going to read a portion of what you write. You want to give them that choice as to how to consume that content. So if they read a basic overview and they're satisfied with what they find there, their exit at that point is to call you. Or maybe this is sort of a drawn-out process where they go to your website and they drill down into the content and they read something specific and they come back the next day and they read more and more, and eventually they've read everything there is to read, and that's the point at which they decide that you're the right attorney for them. But it's important to give them that choice and to build up a really robust collection of information. And don't think that any question or any topic isn't right for your website. If you've got even one client who has asked something in the past, there are many more people out there that may be curious about the same thing, and what they need is somebody who can answer that question for them. Local pages. One of the best things that attorneys can do to address people in local markets is to create pages that they can relate to. And the further you're able to hone in on local information, the more relevant it is for those potential clients and cases that are local in nature. With LawLytics, you can easily put in pictures and maps and so forth, and you can easily create these pages. The mechanics of this are a little bit beyond this webinar. We do have a specific local pages webinar that you can check out if you want. But when you create these pages and you create silos of local pages, think about what happens in the various places where you live. And Rachel's going to talk about this a little more in depth in just a moment, but you want to provide your potential clients with as much information as is useful to them. For example, an estate planning attorney may want to provide information about these sorts of things. So what can you tell your potential clients about banks or brokerages, the county recorder's office, or probate courts? So every page on your website should really address the questions that your potential client has. A specific questions and answers page is special in that it can do a number of different things on one page, so don't overlook the value of adding something like this to your website. If you're sitting across the table from one of your potential clients, you know that you learn a lot about the questions that they have, you learn about their goals, you learn about their concerns and their fears, and these are the same kinds of things that can go on a frequently asked questions page. A good page like this not only helps your visibility, but it can also answer several questions at once. You can devote an entire page or an entire post to one problem. And you can link those pages within your frequently asked questions page, but you can also provide other questions and answers that may be relevant and may be of interest to your potential clients, and that can really help with engagement. Another good thing that a page like this can do is help to manage client expectations. It can increase productivity at your firm. So when clients have questions, a good page like this can act as a resource that you can provide to them. But it can also assist with client expectations to help prevent some surprises. You can address things like timelines, fees, even what's expected during an office visit. Transparency like this can really help to manage expectations. When client expectations don't align with your services, that's where problems can arise. An estate planning attorney may find a potential client who expects a certain kind of outcome because of a perception that they have about how the process works, or they knew someone in a similar situation and they expect that the outcome and the timeline is going to work just the same for them. But a frequently asked questions page can answer all of that. It can answer things like how quickly you're likely to return phone calls or emails, and to really counter unrealistic expectations as well. So The last thing I'll say about this is that every client interaction is an opportunity for you to build a really great frequently asked questions resources for your law firm's website that draws in potential clients. When you address perceptions and questions early on, it gives your potential clients a sense of comfort and it helps to educate them. It aligns their expectations and it inspires potential clients in a way that can really help to draw in the sort of people that you're looking for, and it can increase your productivity at your firm as well. Case studies. So it's important from the perspective of a potential client to not only understand that you know what their problem is or how to solve it, but that you've done things that are relevant to their case in the past, or at the very least that you understand it. Most potential clients don't understand nuance and legalese, but what they do respond well to is detailed fact patterns. So one thing that you can do is take published cases or lower court opinions that aren't necessarily published but are accessible, and take those fact patterns from the opinions and lay them out in individual pages, and then answer the questions about why this happened, the procedure. Then you can even make up hypothetical fact patterns and talk about how the law works in regard to those. Your potential clients will look through those fact patterns to find things that relate to them or that they resonate with. This is one of those exercises that takes a lot of time and it takes some effort, but it's well worth it, and not only for your potential clients but also for search engines that are looking for this kind of relevant material to provide to potential clients who ask questions that are related to it. So we've talked about substantive or evergreen pages. We've talked about blog posts. We've talked about reputational content, like your about pages. But there is one more kind of page that I want to briefly touch upon, and that is a landing page. So landing pages are designed to bring in targeted traffic with a specific goal, and that's whether you want someone to contact your firm, you want them to request a download like an ebook, get on your mailing list, whatever that is, this page is for that specific goal. It is designed to convert the visitor into completing whatever the user action is. Now the benefits of building specific landing pages, which you can do in LawLytics, is this. You convert at higher percentages, and that is because instead of casting a wide net with traditional forms of advertising where you sort of hope to attract potential clients and you sort of hope that you attract clients that are a good fit for your firm too, landing pages can narrow that scope a little bit in a way that benefits your potential clients. They find exactly the sort of information that they're looking for, and it benefits your estate planning practice, and that you begin to build that bond of trust with them and start building that relationship before you have ever met face-to-face. Landing pages also remove distractions, and that is a very important thing. Now, you can have a call to action on a regular page, and that is great. But if you want to drive traffic specifically to your site to take a specific action, one of the best things that you can do is remove any other distractions, and landing pages can accomplish that. You also want to give your potential new client specific, clear instructions, and a landing page for one specific task does that quite well. The overall effect of using a landing page is that you can really drive down the cost of your advertising by being strategic with these landing pages. So that sums up the portion of the webinar that I'm presenting to you. I'm now going to hand it over to Rachel Shalott, who's going to tell you a little more detail about what sort of content you need for your estate planning website. Rachel, good morning.
Thank you, Victoria. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. As Dan said earlier, prior to joining LawLytics, I practiced criminal defense in Pennsylvania, and now I oversee the LawLytics content department. And we work with our attorney clients to plan, create, and refine their web content. So one of the most helpful things you can do before creating content for a new site is to sit down and take some time and really think about the audience for whom you will be writing. Who are you attempting to target, and what are the general demographic characteristics of your audience? What will be the mindset of a visitor to your site? And this might be kind of a complex question to answer, When we're thinking about someone who was recently arrested for DUI, there might be more homogeny in how people are thinking and people are feeling than when you're practicing estate planning, because things such as writing a will, that can be something that it is a very routine thing that people do at any point in their lives, and it's not something that evokes a lot of emotion. However, sometimes a will is being written after receiving a devastating diagnosis. I know that I've been involved in creating different powers of attorney, and I've done that with friends who are maybe transferring the title for a car. But it was also something I had to do before my brother was leaving to serve in Afghanistan. So again, you're thinking about your audience being your potential clients, who they are, where they're coming from, and what kind of feelings and emotions they might be bringing with them. And you're also thinking about who you're planning to target. You're thinking about or targeting people who are planning their estate, targeting adult children who might be encouraging an elderly parent to take that first step and starting to think about the future and that type of thing. So all of these factors will inform your tone. And what you want to do is create a set of internal guidelines as far as what your voice is going to be and what tone you want to use so that you can remain consistent when you're writing for your site now and in the future. You also want to think about your local language. How do people speak? And how are locations referred to? I know Tori mentioned that local pages are very important, and this is really true, but it's important to also keep in mind how your potential clients refer to locations. So for example, if you were searching for a dentist, would you search by your city name? Or are you somewhere that's a little bit more rural and you might search by county name or township? Also think about slang or colloquial terms that users might be using when they're seeking information online in your area. Taking these steps early in the process can be incredibly helpful. Drilling down on the audience you're seeking to serve will be of much greater help than attempting to find any type of vague or general advice on SEO or writing for the web. An unnecessary stumbling block for some firms just starting out can be content. And it's really important to stress that you don't need to invest a significant amount of time or money into creating the content that's necessary to get your site launched, get you started. When we speak with our attorney clients who are launching a new site, we focus on creating what we call the structural content, which includes the homepage, bio, and the About Our Firm pages that Victoria spoke about earlier. And we also include a few substantive practice area pages. And generally at this point, we plan for these pages to be more of a broad overview of a particular topic. We recommend that before you launch, you cover each type of case that you handle or legal service that you're going to offer on your site. Now these pages should provide sufficient information that a potential client with no knowledge of the service should be able to read and walk away from with a general basic understanding. For example, a page on living wills would provide information as to the purpose, as to what this is, the purpose of why you might need one, what else, common terms that it's referred to, situations in which it might be used, and then, how to create one, and then, of course, the ways in which your firm will assist a potential client in creating such a document, and the advantages of choosing you to do so. And this is where you can really personalize because a substantive page can be a little bit dry, and you're talking about certain legal requirements. A lot of times you're citing statutes, but at the end, when then that good personalized call to action, that's where you can add in, the touches that you feel why your firm is unique. And when you're just starting out, we recommend that these pages be no shorter than 500 words on the shorter side, and we generally like to see them closer to 1,000 words, because we find that to get all of the necessary information in, this range is the best. And as Victoria mentioned earlier, we strongly recommend creating an FAQ page, and we strongly recommend doing that in your initial content build, because this page can serve a multitude of purposes. including not only giving your site a boost with the search engines, but all of the other things Victoria talked about as serving as a resource for your firm. And it's also a really good way to sort of create a map for how you want to grow your website. You're looking at the questions you receive the most frequently, and those become great ideas for pages that you might want to write in the future. Even if you're very new to estate planning or the practice area itself, you should be thinking long-term. When deciding which pages you'd like to initially add to your site, think of how you eventually will want to grow your site and flesh those pages out. The reason why we start a new site with a legal practice area pages, like I mentioned, that sort of serve as a broad overview, is because as that website grows, we can easily add subpages that go into much greater detail. For example, to launch a site, we might include a page titled Wills, and that briefly covers a variety of concerns related to why intestacy should be avoided, the probate process, requirements for a will, changing a will in the future. But however, as your site grows, you can use this page as a map for how you'll build out this particular section of your site, creating longer, much more in-depth standalone pages that address each one of those topics. And like I mentioned previously, FAQ pages, another great way to do this. If you're creating your site on another platform, this might be a discussion you do need to have early on in the process with your web developer, because the size of the site or the eventual size you'd like the site to be might dictate how something like a menu is created. However, if you're on the LawLytics platform, it's nothing you have to worry about at the beginning. You can easily add subpages to a practice area page. Those will automatically populate in your navigation menu, and it's very easy to move things around, to turn standalone pages into parent pages with child items and those type of things. You have a ton of flexibility on the platform. It's one of the reasons why we love working in there. And one thing here I do want to caution against is if you find yourself ready to launch a new site and you don't have time to create the pages for each legal service that you provide, we really recommend doing sort of a cluster technique like I spoke about earlier. If you want to cover a few things about wills, putting everything together in one page. Because what we see sometimes is people don't have the time, they want to get going, but they think they need a lot of pages, so they might write a page, something titled like Wills in San Diego, and it only says something like, help protect your family's future. We have years of experience assisting clients with wills. Contact us today. And this probably doesn't provide the information that the user was attempting to obtain with a particular search term. And it doesn't properly address the hierarchy of needs that Victoria introduced earlier. So it's really something that we advise against doing. And so with that, because we have helped a lot of firms launch their sites, I wanted to take the time to examine some common mistakes that we've encountered when attorneys are in the start phase. So as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we see firms who think they really need to have a large amount of content in order to go live, or they have a particular number of pages they think they need to hit before they can even launch their site. And this really isn't true. Adding quality content on a consistent basis is crucial to a successful site. But you really shouldn't allow some notion of how large your site must be block you from pushing your site live. The necessary structural content, in addition to a couple practice area pages that cover the services you provide, is really adequate to get that site launched. It's important to keep in mind that this is just the beginning. When you do organic SEO, when your focus is content, your website is an asset, and that asset is going to appreciate over time. But that appreciation process doesn't start until you launch and go live. So don't let this be a stumbling block. And then I spoke earlier about audience guidelines, and we sometimes see attorneys who really do have their audience nailed down. For example, they're in a small town and they know that the prevailing attitude toward lawyers might be a little bit less than warm, and they know they really want to come across as someone you grab a bite with after work. However, this sometimes gets lost when they're creating content for their site, and the focus shifts more to legalese and stiffer formal language. So in about our firm page would read something like, Mr. Faraday has years of experience handling estate planning matters in Pendleton County, West Virginia. Rather than something like, Matt was born and raised right here in Seneca Rocks. After graduating from WVU, he came back to help his friends and neighbors write wills and plan for their family's future. Again, we really encourage you to, when you're writing, think about how you speak and really write like you'd speak. And then I know that this is something Victoria talked about earlier, but I strongly feel that it bears repeating. We see lawyers who are just starting out and they're really focused on learning SEO tips and tricks, and I think that's something that they need to get started. But again, so many of these are outdated and really ineffective, if not downright having the potential to hurt your web presence. So this is not something we'd ever advise that you spend time on, especially early on in the process. And finally, we sometimes see some inadvertent mistakes. For example, a page might link to a page that in some way promotes another law firm. There are many, many sites out there that consist of nothing but the statutes for a particular state. And a lot of these can be sponsored by a large firm, and they'll have a URL that is somewhat innocuous, maybe like Rhode-Island-Estate-Law.com or something like that. And it might maybe look at first blush to be something that's just a resource page, but it might be part of a site that has a directory of lawyers, or again, if it's sponsored by one particular firm, it might have some type of an Ask a Lawyer feature that's embedded in the page, or somehow links to the sponsoring firm. So this is just something we recommend checking and making sure that you're sticking to governmental resources, such as state legislature pages, when you're writing those practice area pages. And I really think that the start phase is very exciting. It's really an exciting one to be in because you're taking the first step on the journey to creating a really strong online presence. And when you launch a site or open a new firm or you're starting to offer services in a new practice area, one of the best things you can do is track as much data as you possibly can. You might not be getting a great deal of traffic with a newly launched site. There are a lot of other data sets available for you to track. What type of cases is your firm attracting? Oftentimes, firms might have set marketing guidelines that you create at the start, the demographics you're attempting to target. But sometimes marketing opportunities come about organically. Say you're a firm who you do family law, you see a lot of divorces, and estate planning wasn't something that you thought to offer, you were able to offer, I guess. And then you notice that a lot of people going through the divorce process did want to change their will, and so you decide to offer that. And you find that it's really strong. That's something that you can easily build your site around, and you can focus on a lot of your content and writing in those particular areas that you seem to be attracting clients in. And it's also a good idea to keep an eye on larger trends in your area. Victoria mentioned local pages. And so keeping an eye on what clients maybe find difficult or find confusing and incorporating that information into local pages. And this doesn't necessarily have to be even legal resources. This can be things like, she mentioned the probate court. Maybe the probate court is, you're in a small town, small courthouse. It's difficult to find. Or even things such as it's difficult to find parking on jury selection day if you're trying to go down to the courthouse. Things like that, we really can't stress enough the value that some things that aren't directly related to the legal services you provide can have and can really be effective. Because if people are looking for something, like I said, like help on parking, they don't quite understand something. So that can be someone that you are looking to target, and through a channel that wasn't even related to searching for legal services, they've found your site and they found your firm and they have a need that you can meet. And then lastly, one of the most important areas to keep tabs on, the questions that you're getting, the questions that your support staff are getting. So if you have partners, associates, or support staff, you might want to consider creating a shared document. If you have a Google Drive, having a document in there, just a general repository to which everyone in your firm can contribute. And these questions can be the base of your FAQ page and also be the inspiration for future pages that you want to add to your site. So if you have more specific questions regarding content for your site, I really, really encourage you to reach out to us. You can shoot us an email at writing@lawlytics.com or just give us a call. Some of you might already be familiar with her, but Alyssa Rhodes is the director of our content services, and over the past couple of years, she's helped many, many firms create content and launch their site. So if you have a brief question or you want some help getting started, additional resources, or maybe assistance planning for longer terms, we'd be more than happy to help. So I really encourage you to reach out. And finally, the next webinar in our practice area series will be Grow Your Estate Planning Practice, which will air on Monday, February 27th, and be available on demand thereafter. And in this webinar, I'm going to be discussing some additional tools for long-term content strategy and planning, how you can flesh out those initial practice area pages, some lessons we've learned from really successful growing firms, and as well as some common pitfalls that you might want to avoid. So if you're interested in taking that next step, I highly recommend that you join us. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic back over to Victoria.
Thanks, Rachel. So now that you understand how content works and what you need, there are a couple considerations that you'll have to make. The first is how often. How often will you be updating your evergreen content to include new pages? How often will you be publishing to your blog? Keep in mind that, as I discussed previously, for blogging to benefit your firm, you've got to do it consistently. Once a year or once a month will not bring you the sort of results that you want to see with content marketing. Some recent data from HubSpot suggests that businesses who post more than 16 blogs in a month receive 3.5 times more traffic than those who published only up to 4 times a month. And it's reasonable to believe that that trend translates for attorneys as well. Anecdotally speaking, we do see that attorneys who blog more get more traffic. The second thing that you'll have to consider is what topics you're going to write about. The best way to do this is to have a content plan. As a reminder, we do have some nice content planning resources that are free over on our website. The last question is knowing who's going to write that content. Is it going to be you, or is it going to be a proxy writer? And either way, like I said before, you'll need content. The last thing to remember is that if you are writing your own content, perfect is really the enemy of good, or as Ali Sachs over at Iris PR said, it's not a brief, it's a blog. So don't let perfectionism get in the way of your publishing. With that, let's move from the topic of content to the topic of website design, which is another important part of your web presence. For that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Sophia Oliboni, who is our senior web designer. Sophia, good morning.
Good morning, Victoria. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophia, and I would like to take a time to kind of discuss with you the important elements of your website and things to think about as you're developing a website. Excuse me. So the first thing that we have to discuss is that design that fails to communicate is dead. That meaning is that the purpose of design is to communicate. And interactive design has added a new element. Excuse me. Interactive media adds a new element to communication because it's meant to be interacted with. It's not a poster or a newspaper. Attorneys may say that they want something above the fold, as they might with a newspaper, or they might point out something that is at the top of the screen. And the problem with that when it comes to web design is that what is above the fold or at the top of the screen will change based off of the device or the screen size that the user is viewing it upon. So focusing too much on those old terms will keep you from producing something new and something good. So then I will move on to aesthetics and web design. The average user spends just 30 seconds on your website before they move on. And that is just going to be just half a minute. So it is important to have something that's visually pleasing to grab their attention. Aesthetics is known as a set of principles guiding a work of an artist, including color, contrast, graphics, and layout. A website's aesthetics can influence a brand's credibility and perception. In fact, studies have shown a clear link between solid design and your site's credibility. Aesthetics really do have a function. Pleasant visual designs make your potential clients feel more relaxed. As a result, they tend to find a well-designed website more credible and easier to use. It's easier on the eye, and so it's considered more friendly or user-friendly than something that is ugly. But you also have to have something that keeps their attention once you've grabbed it. How you keep it is by having good content that answers a potential client's questions about their case or a problem that they're presented in a readable format. So readability, as I mentioned a little before, is about featuring your content in chunks. So headlines, bullet points, and the occasional bold. Having something that they can easily scan for titles and information is basically what you want. Having content on your website or having good content is very important. And if you have a beautiful but empty website, it's going to be useless. The next thing that we will discuss is the importance of usability. So usability, I kind of touched on a little bit, but usability is the measure of the quality of the user experience when the person interacts with your site. So on the web, usability is critical. It's been described as a necessary condition for survival. If your firm's website is difficult to use, potential clients will leave. If the homepage isn't clear about what you do, people will leave. If it's hard for a reader to, if it's hard to read or it doesn't really answer your client's questions, they will leave. Leave your website is the first line of defense for a user dealing with a difficult site. So for the main characteristics that make up a usable site are that it's quick and easy to learn, is efficient to use, it has rapid recovery from errors, so 404 errors, and that it's easy to remember. Some lawyers just want all of the bells and the whistles. They want a video background, they want slides with tons of different types of movement, and other items that just make their site very heavy and slow. It makes it harder for your potential clients to read the content on the slides or to interact with your site altogether because it's slow, and then it becomes a waste of time and effort. They're going to just leave your site anyways because it's slow. So you have to know when too much is too much and when to scale back a little. Readability and usability is more valuable than trying to have a fancy website. And studies have shown that a website's usability can be influenced by its aesthetics, meaning the frustration that a user feels when a site with poor usability will negatively influence their perception of the site's visual design. And the same thing can be said. So the studies have also showed that users perceive more aesthetically pleasing sites to be easier to use. So what that means is that usability and aesthetics are equally important, but if you choose to focus only on one or the other for your website, it will lead to an incomplete and unsatisfactory solution. They are two sides of the same coin. Next, we'll discuss focusing on what matters and basically how not to sweat the small stuff. Now, if you're saying to yourself, is this the right shade of blue or the right font? You may be focusing on all of the wrong things. Focusing too much on minor details like this can get in the way of an attorney launching their site or focusing on content. Just make sure that you focus on what is important. If you spend a week or two of your time that you could be pulling in new clients going back and forth over different colors or a very similar font, this won't change the overall meaning or functionality of your site, and you're losing business while you're wasting time on that. At the end of the day, each color has a meaning, and blue means what blue means. The fact that you use a slightly lighter or darker shade does not remove the meaning of the color. The important thing is to get your site out there, promote your firm, and to get business. Everything else is going to be secondary. And some people may argue that imagery is part of aesthetics, and that is for the most part correct. But if you're using stock imagery and you're worried about the differences between an image of downtown in your city or an image of your practice areas or a professional photo of your office, well, each of them will have the exact same impact as long as they are a high quality image. Now, the difference between the subject matter will not change the impact on your clients. So if you spend several weeks going back and forth going, oh, which one of these types of images that I want, you're basically just wasting time. And what will have an impact is the time that you wasted on minor things to your clients. Next, I will explain to you the importance of white space. Now, white space is one of the most overlooked and underutilized parts of a good website. Attorneys sometimes perceive it as empty space and a waste of screen real estate, but it's one of the most valuable parts of your design. White space is the space that's going to be between your columns, your text, and your images. It gives your potential clients' eyes time to breathe. It makes people want to continue reading. When it's used well, it can really be transformative for your website. White space increases readability for your clients. It actually helps people understand what they're reading, which adds up to a better user experience overall. And according to research by Human Factors International, white space increases reading comprehension by almost 20%. So now I'm going to just list some of the different benefits of having white space on your website. And one of the top benefits is that it increases interaction. Visitors are always in a hurry, and good white space prevents distractions that slow visitors down. It will get them to your call to action faster than bombarding them with a lot of different things to look at. And with that said, it also helps to highlight your call to actions better. A lot of attorneys think that making something bolder or bigger or adding images to your buttons will draw people to it, but studies have shown that increasing the white space around it is actually more effective. And overall, white space makes your site tidy, and tidy is impressive. So basically, the white space is essential because it indicates fineness and ingenuity. It's not bare or minimalistic when it's used correctly. It actually adds elegance to your site. So now here's an analogy about white space tidiness that I like to use. So imagine that you're in a crowded restaurant on like a Friday night. The place is completely busy and you're sitting across the table from someone and you're trying to discuss something with them and you're trying to form your thoughts. You'll find that if you're in a crowded restaurant that you have a hard time formulating your thoughts and coming up with the words that you want to say because there's just so much happening around you. Well, when your website is busy visually, it becomes noise. So to your potential client, they will have a hard time coming up with a decision or figuring out what they want to do because there's just so much visual noise around them. And that's why the white space is very important, because the white space will increase readability and it will help to balance your site and get rid of all of the noise that will distract your users. Next, we will talk about less is more, Hick's Law. So basically, Hick's Law says that the more choices that we have, the longer that it takes us to make a decision. And the fewer choices that we have, the quicker our decision will be. And Hick's Law can be applied to fine-tune user experience. We can apply it to your links, buttons, content, pages, navigation, images, and so much more. Building a great user experience can be achieved by slimming down our websites and reducing user confusion and increasing conversion rates of your call to action elements. One way that we can achieve that is through progressive disclosure. So by holding back some of the options until they are completely necessary, you help the user maintain focus on the primary set of choices while reducing clutter and confusion. Also, we can think about white space again. If you make use of white space in your design, you can direct where your users look. In this way, you can reduce the options competing for their attention. You can have too much of a good thing. You can easily confuse your users with too many choices. When working on visual design of your website, you should take Hicks' law into consideration and minimize links and options, thus streamlining the user's decision-making process. Next, we will discuss your website links. So having proper link titles is a major accessibility requirement for websites. Most sites use overly general link text like "click here," which says nothing about what is to be found when you do. Link text should be clear and it should make sense out of context. I found that instead of using non-informative phrases such as "click here," "read more," "link to," "info," or verbs in general, that it's sometimes better to make proper concrete nouns in a sentence link. Nouns can help the user quickly grasp what they're clicking without having to read the entire sentence or phrase, whereas verbs are vague and they don't usually give a clear picture of what to expect. So, for example, if you see on this slide, instead of writing "view our firm's case results here," where here is the highlighted element, choosing something like "view our case results," where the noun "case results" is the anchor text, is better. Poor link text hurts usability. So let's say you have a user who is visually impaired in some way. Maybe they use a screen reader. If so, they would have a hard time understanding vague links without having the whole page read to them word for word. In the end, the wording on the link does make a difference to the user. It's important that we make our links visually distinct from the body text and specific to the page or document that they link to. Next, we will discuss establishing your brand. Your brand is your promise to your customers. One thing I often see is that attorneys want lots of content in their logo. However, attorneys don't realize that your logo doesn't need to be a sentence or a paragraph or even a phrase, but a simple visual representation. It should be easy to recognize. The goal here is to reduce the amount of content you have in your logo. The more text really will not scale. It's hard to read. And you should think about it this way. If you already have a logo and there's a lot of text in it, you should ask yourself, could you read this if you were to print it on a pen? Could you read it quickly while you're passing a sign on the freeway? A good logo has to stand out on its own without a tagline. Now, a tagline is something that you can highlight in different parts of your website or your branding, but it doesn't necessarily have to be attached to your logo. Your logo has to stand out on its own. It's got to represent your company even when it scales. You have to look at the future and create something that's sustainable, something that will work if you were to add partners and to grow your firm. Your brand helps to set you apart from your competition. So another thing I see a lot of lawyers do is that they will love another attorney's website or another attorney's branding, and they want theirs to look just like it. But don't try to be another lawyer, and this is why. If your website looks just like another law firm on the web, or your branding looks just like another firm, those potential clients are going to have to use other factors to decide which one of you they'll choose. So has that firm been around longer than you? Are they better established than you? Do they have better reviews than you? If you haven't built a strong enough web presence yet, mimicking something that you like too closely can be a real detriment to your business. And here's something else to think about when it comes to your branding, and that is your domain name. A strong brand generates referrals. Think about the brand separate from yourself. People love brands. People eat brands. People wear brands. People are constantly telling other people about brands that they love. With that said, you can't tell someone about a brand that you can't remember. So if your last name is really hard to spell or pronounce, then it's probably not the best brand name or the best URL name for your company. Have something that is easily recognizable, and in this case, shorter is better. So defining your law firm's brand. When you're establishing your brand, I find that these sets of questions help to kind of fine-tune and to help you figure out what you want to produce. And so ask yourself these sets of questions. What is your firm's mission? What is your purpose? What is your drive? What is the benefit for a potential client if they were to choose your firm over others? What sets you apart from your competitors? What are you bringing to the table? What do clients think about your firm? And if you're just starting out, you should ask yourself, what should clients think about your firm? What qualities do potential clients associate with your firm? And those qualities can be adjectives that you kind of point out in your tagline, and that would be a good use of that. Next, we'll discuss your logo. So in short, a logo should be simple, memorable, timeless, versatile, and appropriate. It is something your potential clients will easily recognize. It features something unique without being overdone. Think about the logos that you know off the top of your head. For instance, McDonald's. When you think McDonald's, you already see the golden arch, and you see the shape of the M, you see the yellow and the red color scheme. Coca-Cola has been timeless. It's featured roughly the same red and white logo since 1885. Your website will evolve with technology, and that's one of the things that we help you stay on top of here at LawLytics. But your branding should be here to stay. Longevity is key. A good logo doesn't just go on your website. It may be featured on your business cards, your letterhead, promotional items, pens, sponsorship banners, on a booth at a convention, on flyers, and of course on your social media accounts. So it has to be versatile. You have to be able to write and visually represent it in a lot of different ways. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself to see if your logo is effective. Does it work when it's stacked? Does it work when it's shaded? Can you produce it to the size of a postage stamp? Can you reproduce it the size of a billboard? Can you print it in reverse, meaning can you have either light or a dark background behind it? Can you have an image behind it? If it only works in one color, then it's not going to be a good logo. If you can't shrink it or grow it easily, then it's not going to work. It should be scalable to any size, both horizontal and vertical formats. If your logo can't hold its own in black and white, then it may not be as strong as you think it is. Here's another thing for lawyers to consider. Lawyers often gravitate towards typical legal images, and for those, I'm talking about like the pillar, the courthouse, the gavel, the scale of justice. But think about all the logos that you already know about that have nothing to do with the product that they represent. For instance, Apple. Computer logos don't have to show computers, and Apple does it. It's an apple, but it's iconic, and you would recognize it anywhere. Car logos don't have to show cars. Subaru is a Constellation, and the Dodge logo is that of a Ram. So don't feel like you're confined to just law-based imagery for your logo. Think outside of the box. Next, we'll touch upon your firm's tagline. Does your firm's tagline capture your brand? And you might be able to recall the taglines for some of these popular brands that I have on the slide. For instance, you have Lay's, bet you can't have just one. M&M, it melts in your mouth and not in your hands. And Dunkin' Donuts, America runs on Dunkin'. So these taglines are short, they're easy to remember, and they say something about the brand. Like for instance with Lay's, bet you can't have just one, it tells me that this is delicious because it's addictive, and if I have one, I'm going to want to eat all of it. And so when you're developing your firm's tagline, think about it this way. Remember that you want to have something short, that you want to have something that people are going to be able to recognize and remember. And here's a good example of that, and it's something that has stuck with me for a long time. When I lived in South Florida, there was a personal injury law firm whose tagline was, after 911, call 411, 411 pain. So they used to create jingles that would play on the radio station that would repeat this tagline all day. And even till this day, if anyone says the words 911, I immediately think of their tagline, and I say to myself, call 411 pain. I've never forgotten it. And that's because it is catchy, and it is short and easy to remember. So now that we've talked about some of the basic design considerations, in February we'll dig deeper into the elements of design that can have a psychological effect on your potential clients and encourage them to engage with you. We'll discuss choosing the right kinds of typeface, what colors mean, and what they can say about your firm, the various shapes of logos, and how they can affect a potential client's perception of your firm, as well as examples how to make your content more readable. With that, I'm going to turn the mic back over to Dan.
Thank you, Sophia. Glad your voice was able to hold up for that last part of it. We really appreciate it. So we are now about 70 slides into this webinar and at the 2-hour and 20-minute mark, and we've gone over a lot of information. If you're just getting started or trying to figure out how to reboot your estate planning marketing and make it work again, the good news is that you don't need to remember all the details that we went over or implement them all at once. The important thing is to simply get started on the fundamentals. If you're wondering where to start, we can help. And if you're already well on your way, next month's estate planning webinar in the Grow series will provide you with actionable items that are easy to implement and over time can significantly add sustainable revenue to your practice. As you're thinking about growing your estate planning practice using the internet, it's also important to evaluate the choice of technologies that you have out there. Now, no technology does everything well. And especially with estate planning, you have an opportunity to really dip into several different types of technology to make up your online practice stack. LawLytics is very helpful and we think is best suited for the marketing aspect of it. But there are other types of software that can be integrated as well. And we see attorneys using online document signing programs, case management, document assembly programs, and so forth. And all of those can be worked into your overall web strategy. And that's something that we're very good at helping our members discover based on their needs. Before we go to questions and answers, if there are any, in just a moment, I do want to mention that we recently did a webinar on reputation management, and that webinar is available to view on demand at lawlytics.com/webinars. Reputation management is important for every lawyer, but especially when you're dealing with emotional issues and you're dealing with people that are oftentimes consulting a lawyer in a hard situation. Having a good online reputation through reviews marketing can really help solidify their choice in you. And that webinar goes over a lot of the basics as well as talks about some additional webinar or reputation management software that we now make available as well. I hope to see you in the next couple months with the coming estate planning webinars. If you have questions about your estate planning marketing and want to talk it over with us, the easiest way to get started if you're not a LawLytics member is to go to the LawLytics website and simply use the green button to schedule a consultation. You'll be taken directly to our calendar to be able to talk it over with us. I want to thank Sophia, Rachel, and Victoria for each of your presentations, and I want to thank everybody here for attending. Hope it helped, and I hope to see you again soon. And with that, let's go ahead and end the recording, and now we can see if there are any questions.